This is a video to help you with the kinematic equations worksheet, which you should do before you attempt the actual kinematic problems on this week's assignment. So on the worksheet, I've listed the variables, and you should have watched all those videos about kinematic quantities, so you know what these variables are. And then there are these four equations. They're called the kinematic equations of uniformly accelerated motion. The reason they're called that is because they only apply to motions where acceleration is constant the entire time. And as far as you're concerned, all the problems you'll be asked to do will have constant acceleration. So the purpose of this worksheet is to practice your algebra. And really that's all it's about right now is algebra. So you'll notice that there are 5 variables here. And those 5 variables completely describe any kind of motion. If you know what all those 5 numbers are, you know everything there is to know about the motion. But you'll notice the equations, each equation only has 4 variables in it. And it's missing. Each equation is missing a variable. So these are all completely different equations. And depending on the problem, you will have to use a different equation. So one task is going to be, how do you figure out which equation to use, which I'll talk about in the next video as well. But another task is going to be rearranging these equations for the unknown quantity that you're trying to find. And this is purely an algebraic exercise. Now, you have learned about the rules of algebra, getting rid of brackets, getting rid of fractions, taking everything over to one side, and then all the unknowns over to the other side, and then gathering up terms. Now, this is what I want you to do on this worksheet. So for example, the first question there, it says 3 givens, and then it says find. And the first question is VI, VF, and A. And then it says find T. Okay, what this means is when you have a kinematics problem, you're going to read the problem, and they're going to give you 3 numbers. And they only ever give you 3 numbers. If they give you, you can't just make up numbers for these 5 variables. You can make up any 3 numbers, but the other 2 are then determined by these equations. So they are fixed, and they make the trip unique. So if we were given these 3 quantities, initial velocity, final velocity, and acceleration, and you're asked to find how long this particular trip takes, then first of all, you're going to have to choose the equation. So you go to your list here, and you notice with these 4, we're missing delta x. So you're neither given delta x nor asked for delta x. We don't care about delta x right now. And so you go up and you choose the equation up here that's missing delta x, which is the first equation. So that's how you decide on the equation. So that's the first thing you want to do, is decide on the equation. So the decision is we choose the equation that's missing delta x. Okay, the next thing I want you to do is the algebra to solve for the unknown. So this becomes now what you're trying to solve for. So you have to solve for this. And I would recommend that you do this before you start putting numbers in, because it's just a little more classy and it's just better for you, and it's a good idea. So if we need to solve for that, we apply all our rules of algebra. So rule number 1, get rid of fractions. We don't have any. Get rid of brackets. We don't have any. Get all the terms that have the unknown in it on one side and all the other terms on the other. So this is where we start. So I need to get rid of this VI because it's on the side with the unknown. So I'll leave the AT on one side, and on the other side, I'll subtract VI. That's the first thing. The second thing now is to gather up factors of the unknown, but we don't have that. We just have it appearing once. And then the last thing is to divide. So I have to divide this by A. I have to divide all of that by A. That cancels, and the answer is that T is equal to VF minus VI divided by A. And that's just what I want you to write in where this would be the solution. Okay, so I've given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more examples to practice. And there's one exception here you have to be a little bit careful about, and that is if you're dealing with this equation, the delta x equals VIT plus 1/2 AT squared. This is a quadratic equation in T. So if the unknown were T in this equation, you would have to use the quadratic formula, but you're never going to get a problem like that. So you will get a problem though that this will be the equation of interest, but you will also be given that VI equals 0. Now, if you're given VI is equals 0, this is one case where I'd suggest you sub that in right away. If VI is 0, that equation completely changes and becomes 0 plus 1/2 AT squared. Now you can solve for T without having to use the quadratic equation. So now if the question were solve for T, and you have one like this on your assignment, then you can write this like this. You go 1/2 AT squared equals delta x. I'll get the unknown on the left. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that fraction. So now I have AT squared is 2 delta x. Now I'm going to divide both sides by A to get rid of the A, and I have T squared is 2 delta x over A, and then I can take the square root. And so T becomes the square root of 2 delta x over A. Now, when I take that square root, I do not have to put plus or minus here because you're never going to have a negative time. But do beware of taking square roots when you're looking for velocities, final velocities. So if, for example, you were one of the questions, well, let's just say we use this equation, VF squared equals VI squared plus 2A delta x. And the unknown here is VF, and we need to solve for VF. Well, you have to take the square root of both sides of that equation. Square root of this, square root of this. And when you do that, you have to go in here plus or minus. Okay, so whenever you take the square root, if you're trying to find a velocity, now you have to choose here. So choose the right sign. And the way you're going to choose that is if the object's going up, VF is positive. So if VF is up, that's a positive number. If the object's going down, VF is a negative number. And you have to figure out whether it's going up or down and which one you're going to choose. Okay, so that should be all you need to go ahead and do that worksheet and hand it in with this week's assignments.